A distress call went out to the United States Coast Guard at 1 o'clock in the morning on the 15th of May, 2017. Lewis Bennett, on a sailing honeymoon with his new wife Isabella, was floating alone in a life raft. His catamaran was taking on water. It was slowly sinking. As rescue teams scoured the water in the dead of the night, they located Lewis. They also found the submerged wreckage of his boat. But what they did not find was anything in the water that could have caused the vessel to sink. And they could not find Isabella. Hi everyone, I'm Kevin and welcome to Just Thought Lounge. Today's case takes a look at a honeymoon that turned into a tragedy. A newlywed couple that should have been enjoying the trip of a lifetime. But instead of celebrating the start of their future life together, only the husband returned. Questions about what exactly happened on the boat that night followed him home. Let's take a look. Lewis Bennett, originally from Dorset in England, was a mining engineer by trade. He was also an experienced sailor. Holding both Australian and British citizenship, Lewis was well-traveled by the time he met and fell for Isabella Hellmann, also 40 years old, in Florida in 2015. Isabella had been born in Cuba, but was a naturalized American citizen. She made a living as a real estate agent in Delray Beach, where she owned a condo and had an active social life. After meeting through an online dating site, Lewis and Isabella's relationship developed quickly. In July 2016, they welcomed daughter Amelia, who quickly became the center of their lives and their greatest joy. In February the following year, the couple decided to marry. Three months after they said "I do," the newlyweds set out on Lewis's catamaran, Surf of Summer, to St. Martin, Puerto Rico, and Cuba for a delayed honeymoon. On the morning of May 14th, the adventure nearly over, Isabella used their satellite phone to call home to her sister. They had just set out from Veradero and were headed back to the Florida coast. Isabella was looking forward to returning home and reuniting with her daughter. In the early morning of May 15th, the United States Coast Guard, the USCG, received an emergency position indicating radio beacon and personal locator beacon approximately 26 nautical miles west of Cay Sal Bank in the Bahamas. Lewis Bennett, floating alone in the water, was placing distress calls. The Surf of Summer had struck an unknown object in the dark of the night. It had taken on water rapidly. While Lewis floated in a life raft sending pleas for help, his new wife, Isabella, was unaccounted for. It was nearly 4 a.m. by the time the Coast Guard located Lewis in international waters and airlifted him to safety. Their response had been swift, yet it had been hours since Isabella had been last seen alive aboard the boat. Lewis told the USCG that he had gone to the cabin to sleep that evening just after dinner at roughly 8 p.m., leaving Isabella to operate the catamaran at the helm. He said he awoke when the boat struck an unknown object in the middle of the night, rocking the vessel and causing water to flood inside. When he moved topside, Isabella was no longer there. Lewis deployed his life raft and abandoned ship. If she was to be saved, given the conditions in the water, Isabella would need to be located in a matter of hours. The USCG jumped into action, searching thousands of square miles for any indication of Isabella. A spokesperson explained what information they had to work with for the search, that Lewis had last seen his wife on deck, and that at that point in time, she was wearing a life jacket, a fact that gave hope to everyone involved in the search.
Wearing a life vest when you went below that night. We're not positive she was wearing one when she went overboard. Sleep, and he felt that they ran into something in the night and went above deck, and they were taking on water, and he couldn't find her. It's certainly a large search area right now, but we're putting
While the Coast Guard searched for Isabella, they managed to locate the wreckage of the catamaran, which had by that time become fully submerged. The search did not yield any further discoveries. 3 days later, on the 18th of May, with no sign of Isabella, the search was called off.
You just don't see things like this happen, you know? We know that we're all gonna die, but this is just the weirdest thing ever. It can't end like this, you know? We need help. We need people just to keep sharing, find Isabella, hashtag find Isabella.
Once back at home in Delray Beach, Louis Bennett was interviewed a second time by law enforcement. He explained that the honeymooners had begun their voyage in St. Martin and had traveled to Puerto Rico and other islands prior to arriving in Cuba. The couple spent the day before the wreck in Varadero, Cuba, before departing in early evening, about 5:30 p.m., to head to either Key West or Fort Lauderdale. Before he set off to bed that night, Louis set the autopilot on a course heading towards Florida. He told Isabella to take the watch and wake him if he was needed. After a few hours, he was awakened by a crash underneath. The sailor told police that he went to the upper deck and Isabella was not there. Noticing then that the vessel was taking on water, he began to prepare to abandon the ship. It took him roughly 45 minutes, he said, to gather his personal belongings into a life raft and abandon the surf of summer to the water. It was the FBI that took over Isabella's missing person case. In Delray Beach, they searched the home that the newlyweds shared, ostensibly for an indication that the disappearance may be more than a tragic accident. They found a few red flags. An experienced sailor, Louis had not made any attempts to locate the source of the flooding on the boat, nor had he taken the next logical step, which would be to attempt to stop the catamaran from taking on the water. More disturbing, when asked what efforts he had made to search for his wife, he indicated that he did not do anything. No flares were fired to illuminate the area. He claimed not to have been calling out to her across the water. He did not search the area surrounding the boat to see if she had fallen in. In fact, once on board the life raft, Louis cut the line that tethered the raft to the boat. He explained that he did this because he was afraid of being pulled underwater if the vessel were to sink. According to the USCG and catamaran design and sales personnel, the Surf of Summer is a type of catamaran that is very seaworthy, and given the sailing training and capabilities of Louis Bennett, the boat should have been able to stay afloat if he had followed very basic flooding procedures. Members of the helicopter, fixed-wing plane, and 2 cutters, which are the Coast Guard search and rescue vessels, all involved in the search efforts for Isabella, reported that no navigation hazards were observed during their search and rescue efforts. Despite days of searching, teams could not identify an object that could have struck the vessel in the night. Additionally, no other vessels were observed near the area where Louis was rescued. Louis Bennett's story, like his catamaran, was full of holes. On the 19th of May, only a few days after Isabella went missing at sea, and the day after the search efforts were formally paused, Louis Bennett requested that the Coast Guard provide a letter of presumed death for Isabella. If his wife was presumed dead, Louis would be entitled to her estate. The USCG refused to do so, explaining that they do not have the authority. The following day, the new husband booked 2 one-way tickets to the UK for himself and Amelia. He planned to collect his daughter from Isabella's mother and sisters who were caring for her and take her across the ocean to his parents' home. But in order to take his daughter and leave the country, he first needed to collect her. In the time between Isabella's disappearance and his return to Florida, Louis believed that the condo that he and Isabella shared had been entered and items removed, and not just by the FBI. Louis accused the Hellmanns of entering and taking many of Isabella's personal belongings and other items. The Boca Raton police monitored the exchange.
I understand if you came to
I
get...
don't want to talk about anything right now. I'm sorry. I don't want to talk about anything.
I need that stuff back. Yeah?
We don't have anything. We
Yeah.
don't have anything.
It's video
God, you
surveillance.
can kill me right now if I took something from your house.
I'm not saying you necessarily, but your family came into
I
our
know
house.
you're
and took
engaged.
stuff. So you don't have any of these things. You don't have a laptop, you don't have the iPad, you don't have the bag.
Back. I don't want anything.
Okay. Are you telling me you've taken none of this stuff?
I don't have anything. Go look for it.
I don't
Go
need to go
look
and
for
look.
it.
You need to give it to me back.
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Things turned ugly when Lewis collected Amelia from her grandmother. The Hellmans feared that they may never see her again.
You guys, you've got to be better than this.
You don't need clothes.
You're not going to see her again.
You killed my sister. You killed my sister.
No, Vino. No, mi niña. Mami. Mi niña, no.
He killed my sister.
Your sister's dead?
Yeah, he killed my sister.
How did your sister die?
Yeah, he killed my
Have you seen the news?
No, how did your sister die?
She disappeared. She disappeared. Look at the news. He's being investigated.
Oh, is she the one from Bahamas?
Yeah.
Can you stop touching the baby, please? This is not right.
We already know. You're getting investigated.
Obviously, but there's nothing to investigate. Why don't you make this easier for everyone?
Anything else I could do for you? It would be best probably if
Yeah.
just take it off. You know, that's it. I mean, if you want to let them see the baby one more time, that would be probably goodwill. You know what I'm saying? I'll stick around if you want to let them hold the baby for a few minutes.
I don't think that's right.
It's up to you, man. But if you want, I'll stick around for that.
That's okay. I'm good.
Okay.
It's better for her.
On or about May 28th, Lewis did take Amelia to the UK, first to England, where his parents lived, and then to Scotland, to his sister's home. He did not tell the Hellmann family of his plans.
Amparo says Bennett has changed since Isabella's disappearance.
En ningún momento yo pensé que él se me iba a llevar la niña a los 15 días. Que nos ayuden y que me ayuden con mi niña también. Que estamos sufriendo mucho.
The FBI investigation was ongoing. Agents began by examining the items that the USCG had retrieved from the life raft used to abandon the surf of summer. Lewis had secured a number of personal items in his raft, including a suitcase and 2 backpacks. When he was winched into the helicopter, he took one of the backpacks with him, leading the US Coast Guard rescue swimmer to notice how it was unusually heavy. That backpack was not searched, but everything left behind in the raft was. In total, Lewis had with him in his raft the suitcase and backpacks, unexpended parachute flares, buoys, 14 gallons of water, a jar of peanut butter, a secondary emergency position indicating radio beacon, a tea set, Cuban trinkets, and 9 plastic tubes wrapped with clear tape containing what were determined to be silver coins. These coins were not standard change. The tubes contained 235 collectible silver coins worth about $4,200. Agents would later find 162 more coins in the condo in Delray Beach. The rare coins were returned to him briefly, but on the same day, the authorities allegedly realized they had been stolen a year before from a sailing vessel, the Kitty R, based on the Caribbean island of St. Martin. Lewis had been working as a crew member on the yacht at the time and had filed a police report to St. Martin Police, saying the boat had been broken into while the owner had been away. When the FBI sent photos of the coins to the Kitty R's owner, they were identified as being from a coin collection worth a total of $100,000 that had been stolen in the burglary. In the backseat of Isabella's car, the FBI found $20,000 in cash, assumed to be gained from the coins that had already been sold. Investigators maintained their yet unproven suspicions that Isabella Hellmann's disappearance was no accident. In terms of proof, what they had was a case against the husband for transporting stolen rare coins, not a case for murder. Lewis Bennett was arrested on the coin charges. His young daughter remained overseas. While serving a 7-month sentence, Lewis, through his personal lawyers, filed in probate court in Palm Beach County a request for a presumptive death certificate for his wife. Once this declaration was legally made, he would have access to the condo she had solely owned, her bank accounts, and other assets. The judge was not impressed. Florida law holds that a person should be missing for no less than 5 years before such a declaration is made. It had only been 5 months. The FBI saw this as further circumstantial evidence that Louis Bennett had more than likely murdered his wife.
People generally hope the other person is alive, and they wait as long as possible. So the immediacy of this is concerning. I don't have anybody now, even from the Coast Guard, who's testified this is inaccurate and full report. I don't have any testimony that she was on the boat.
The judge also asked, what's the rush? Because it's been 5 months since Isabella went missing. Can
Correct.
you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I don't actually view it as a rush. I know it's not 5 years, but we do have assets that otherwise are just going to go to waste.
What are the things he's trying? I know it's the home, the car, other bank accounts.
There's 2 small bank accounts, as you heard me talk about. There's some minor tangibles, a car, home. I don't remember anything off the top of my head.
The judge refused to make the declaration at that time. Louis's attorney believed that he would require the support of the Hellmann family in order to succeed in changing the judge's ruling. Except, the Hellmanns were not ready to declare Isabella lost to them forever. They also believed that if her assets were to be transferred, they should be given to her daughter, not Louis Bennett.
But they have been very vocal about not wanting her to be presumed dead, and I believe that's completely against what your client is after.
I'm not aware of them being vocal about this.
They've spoken to us and told us, on the record, that they don't want her declared dead.
Why is that?
They said that they still have hope she's missing. It's only been 5 months, and they're surprised that Mr. Bennett would want to do this so quickly.
I can guarantee you Mr. Bennett would he himself would much prefer that they find Isabella.
During the course of the investigation, law enforcement learned that Louis did not activate his satellite phone and register his personal locator beacon, his PLB, until he was in Cuba in mid-May. By that time, the couple had already traveled from St. Martin's to Puerto Rico and then to Cuba earlier in the month. Experts familiar with transnational sailing consulted by the FBI believed that the voyage from St. Martin would warrant having an activated satellite phone and a registered PLB on board the boat as life-saving devices. That Louis waited until the final leg of the voyage to activate those devices is indicative of the fact that he wanted to ensure his own rescue and survival after murdering his wife and intentionally scuttling his catamaran. The Coast Guard discovered the catamaran floating upside down about 30 miles west of the Bahamas. The wreckage was photographed to document the damage. Experts reviewing these images reached a few disturbing conclusions about what had occurred. They found that the holes made to the hull likely came from inside of the vessel because the spraying of the material faced outwards. There were 2 holes, each in nearly the same position on both hulls. Additionally, the exterior of the hulls do not show the kind of markings that one would expect if the boat had encountered an object in the water. Certainly, if the impact with the object was forceful enough to penetrate the hulls on both sides. According to USCG personnel and other maritime experts, this damage was also not catastrophic.
Holes were too neat. There's no scraping around the holes. You don't see anything leading up to that puncture, and you don't see anything trailing from it.
The photographs of the capsized vessel also show that the escape hatches in both hulls had been opened. These escape hatches are below the waterline and should never be open while the boat is in the water unless someone is actively escaping through them. Opening these escape hatches would cause water to enter and flood the cabin.
Once you open the hatch, you pretty much have declared your intentions and prevented the boat from being saved.
The FBI concluded that the catamaran did not sink from accidental damage. It was intentionally scuttled. Their experts stated that, "I cannot think of any items that would accidentally cause similar holes in both hulls at roughly the same time." In addition to that, the boat was easily salvageable based on this damage. It was the purposeful opening of the 2 escape hatches that caused the boat to flood. The investigators did not speculate as to how exactly Isabella's death had been caused, but the wreckage told a clear story. It was staged. Louis Bennett was charged with second-degree murder while serving his sentence for transporting the stolen coins. Prosecutor Benjamin Greenberg planned to introduce evidence of conversations with loved ones in which Isabella is said to have discussed arguments about their finances and parenting. The prosecution asserted that Isabella's murder would remove the marital strife from Louis's life and allow him to live as he pleased. He would also inherit money, a condo, and the Mercedes from Isabella's estate. Prosecutors further alleged that Isabella may have found out he had stolen the gold and silver coins from his former employer in St. Martin. This could have made her an accomplice in the smuggling crime. Her discovery would have also placed the couple at odds while out on the open water together. In November 2018, Louis Bennett reached an agreement with Florida prosecutors to plead guilty to manslaughter for the death of his wife. He was given the maximum sentence allowable for this charge: 8 years in federal prison.
I think the judge recognized the severity of the crime and sentenced as he felt was appropriate.
As part of his plea deal, he renounced any claims to his wife's belongings and agreed that all of the money in the estate would go to a trust fund for daughter Amelia, who would turn 3 years old that year. After the charges were filed, the Hellmanns sought to acquire a death certificate for Isabella. This step allowed them to sell her condo and place the proceeds into a trust for Amelia. The toddler remained in the UK with the Bennett family. She had been in contact with the Hellmanns through video calls. It was also reported that an overseas visit had been arranged, the first that Isabella's family would see her daughter since the first weeks after the mother's disappearance.
What we do is hope that the visits will go forward. There'll be a continuation of those so that Amelia grows up knowing that she has 2 families that love her and care about her and can support her.
At the time of publication, Isabella Hellmann has not been found. And that was the strange case of Isabella Hellmann and her sailor husband, Louis Bennett. Thanks for joining me in the lounge today. I'm Kevin. This is Just Thought Lounge, and I'll see you in the next one.